Childhood Shadows, the boy behind the smile. James Clayton Dobson Jr. was born on April 31, 1936, in Shreveport, Louisiana. To the outside world, his upbringing seemed almost idyllic, a Christian family, rooted in prayer, discipline, and traditional values. But the truth, the one rarely told in glossy biographies, is that James grew up under the weight of expectations, heavier than most children could imagine. His father, James Dobson Sr., was a traveling evangelist. That meant young James was raised in an environment where holiness wasn't just a calling, it was an obligation. From the very start he was told, "You will carry this mantle, you will serve God, you will lead." For a little boy, those words were less of an inspiration and more of a cage. While other children played carefree in the streets, James often felt the silent pressure to be perfect. If he stumbled, if he misbehaved, if he showed weakness, it wasn't just him who failed. It was his family, his faith, his God. That constant burden shaped the man he became, disciplined, strict, moral to the core, but also haunted by an unshakable fear of falling short. The making of a psychologist. Most people know James Dobson as the man who blended psychology with Christianity, but they don't know how lonely his path was. In the 1950s and 1960s, psychology was viewed with suspicion in many church circles. Pastors said, "We don't need Freud, we have the Bible." Yet James pursued psychology with almost obsessive determination. He earned his PhD in child development from the University of Southern California. To many, this was impressive. To Dobson, it was a lifeline. He believed he could use science to strengthen families and protect children. But here's the hidden truth. During his university years, Dobson often battled a deep internal war. He was torn between the scientific world and the religious world. In academia, colleagues mocked his conservative Christian views. In church, fellow believers whispered, "Dobson is flirting with secular psychology. He's compromising." That feeling of never belonging followed him like a shadow. He was a man split between two worlds, and it quietly ate away at him. Dare to discipline, fame born from pain. In 1970, James Dobson released the book that would define his career, Dare to Discipline. The book was a sensation. Parents across America hailed him as a hero, a man brave enough to tell the truth about raising children in a rebellious era. But behind the bold words on the page was a man who knew what it felt like to grow up under harsh discipline. His strong views on spanking, authority, and obedience weren't just theories, they were the echoes of his own childhood. The success of Dare to Discipline catapulted Dobson into fame. Speaking invitations flooded in. Churches, TV shows, radio programs. Everyone wanted the man who saved the American family. And yet, as applause grew louder, James quietly admitted to close friends that he felt emptier than ever. The book had given him influence, but it had also chained him to a public image he could never escape. He had to be the perfect family man, the Christian psychologist, the voice of America's homes. No mistakes allowed, no cracks in the armor. Focus on the family, a dream with hidden costs. In 1977, Dobson founded Focus on the Family, the ministry that would make him one of the most recognizable evangelical leaders in the world. At its peak, his daily radio broadcasts reached over 220 million people worldwide. But here's what most don't know. The very ministry that brought him power also brought him pain. Dobson worked tirelessly, often sacrificing personal rest and family time for the mission. Ironically, the man who taught America how to balance work and family was quietly struggling to do the same in his own home. Friends and staff later admitted, James lived under pressure. He demanded excellence from himself and from everyone else. There were days when he seemed exhausted, almost broken. The first cracks appear. By the late 1980s, Dobson had become not just a Christian leader, but a political voice. He spoke boldly against abortion, pornography, same-sex marriage, and the moral decline of America. Millions loved him for it. Millions hated him for it. The media branded him as the Christian rights general. Critics called him dangerous, intolerant, and extreme. He received threats. Protesters gathered outside his offices. But what really broke him was the isolation. Dobson, the boy who always feared not belonging, now stood in a world where half of America idolized him and the other half despised him. And deep inside he began to ask the question no leader wants to face. Am I doing this for God, or am I just trapped in the image people expect of me? The family man under pressure. To the public, James Dobson was the perfect Christian husband and father. His radio broadcasts and books overflowed with practical advice, how to discipline children, how to strengthen marriage, how to live a God-centered home life. He spoke with such confidence that listeners assumed his own family must have been flawless. But reality was much more complicated. Behind closed doors, Dobson struggled with the same issues every father faces: tension, exhaustion, arguments, and moments of regret. Friends close to the family have said that Dobson often carried guilt that his own children would grow up resenting the very discipline he preached. His wife, Shirley, was a quiet but powerful presence in his life. She supported him, stood by him, and raised their children. But she too carried the burden of being married to a man constantly in the spotlight. Every word James spoke was scrutinized, every action dissected. For Shirley and the children, privacy was almost non-existent. Dobson once admitted in private that the hardest part of being a family champion was the fact that he had less and less time for his own family. The irony was cruel, and it gnawed at him silently. Faith meets politics, a dangerous road. In the 1980s and 1990s, America was shifting rapidly. The sexual revolution had already reshaped culture. Abortion debates raged after Roe v. Wade, and the rise of the LGBTQ+ movement challenged traditional values. For Dobson, these changes felt like a direct attack on the family system he devoted his life to protecting. He stepped boldly into the political arena, calling out presidents, lobbying for conservative policies, and rallying millions of evangelicals. Politicians feared and respected him. At one point, insiders claimed that a single word from Dobson could influence the Christian vote in key states. But stepping into politics was not without cost. Suddenly, he wasn't just a pastor psychologist anymore. He was a culture warrior. His image hardened, and critics painted him as a symbol of intolerance. Some insiders within Focus on the Family began whispering, "This isn't what we signed up for. We wanted to save families, not become a political machine." Dobson, however, believed he had no choice. He saw himself as a watchman on the wall, warning America before it was too late. But in the quiet of the night, the question haunted him: had his calling to protect families turned into a battlefield that was slowly destroying his own peace? Controversies that shook his legacy. Every leader who rises to prominence eventually faces opposition. For Dobson, the controversies came one after another. His strong stance on discipline, including corporal punishment, sparked outrage among psychologists and child advocates. Critics accused him of promoting abuse. Dobson defended himself, saying discipline done in love was essential, but the backlash left deep scars. His opposition to same-sex marriage and LGBTQ rights made him a target of activists who accused him of spreading hate. Protests outside his offices became common. Dobson received letters filled with venom, even threats to his life. His blending of faith and politics alienated some Christians who felt the gospel was being hijacked for culture wars. For Dobson, each controversy wasn't just a debate, it was personal. He wasn't simply disagreeing with people, he was being portrayed as the villain of modern America. And for a man raised to carry his family's spiritual reputation, that level of public shaming was devastating. The strain inside Focus on the Family. By the 2000s, Focus on the Family had become an empire, a massive ministry with thousands of employees, countless radio affiliates, and global influence. But running such a machine came with constant tension. Staff members described an environment of unrelenting pressure. Dobson demanded excellence, and his perfectionism sometimes clashed with those who worked under him. While many admired his passion, others quietly confessed that the workplace felt intense, even overwhelming. Dobson himself admitted that he carried a fear that one mistake, one scandal, or one compromise could bring down the ministry. That fear made him cautious, sometimes controlling,